On the Broadneck Peninsula, tucked between the Severn and the Magothy rivers, lies a history often left untold. A history not written in textbooks, but carried in voices, in memories, in their heirlooms passed from hand to hand. This is the story of African American communities who endured, who built, who loved, and who preserved their legacy against all odds. Their voices, recorded and now preserved in the Maryland State National Archive, remind us we were here, we are here, and we will not be forgotten. Generations ago, African Americans on the Broadneck Peninsula carved out communities on this land. Some were free people, some descendants of the enslaved, all determined to create spaces of faith, family, and resilience. They built churches like Asbury Broadneck, planted crops, raised children, and established a rhythm of life rooted in dignity and hope.
Hello, my name is Devon Edwards, and today I will be interviewing Sister Ann Green. Today is November 26, 2023, and we are conducting today's interview at Asbury Broadneck United Methodist Church. This is the first interview session with Sister Ann for the annual Father's Day Foundation or History Project. Thank you for joining us today. As we begin the interview, can you please introduce yourself by name and say where you're from?
I was born Rosalind Ann Green from Skidmore. I got married, divorced, and I took on my ex-husband's last name is Fountain, like water fountain. So I use my names interchangeably. People who've known me for decades, who my relatives know me as Ann Green, typically. I have friends who call me Rosalind, and also my work friends call me R-O-Z, Roz. So I was born in Annapolis at the hospital and came home to Skidmore.
All right. While we're on the subject of where you're from, can you begin by describing your hometown? What was your community like?
For me, everybody has different experiences. For me, it was a beautiful place full of love and friendship and stability for me. When I was born, my parents lived in a trailer. Due to zoning, many people in these communities lived in trailers. It was allowed. You could have a house and a trailer on your property. My great-grandparents lived in a house. They had an acre of land, and my mother and father lived in a trailer on that property. So when I was born, I came home to a trailer with my mother and father and my sister, who was about a year and a half older than I. So I had cousins on the left and the right, up and down Log End Road, and it was just a place full of family and love and friendship. So that's what it was for me.
Were there mostly African Americans or other racial groups in your community?
I don't know any Caucasians or other racial groups who lived in my community.
What was your home life like?
It was good. My great-grandparents were deceased when I was born. My great-grandmother was alive when my sister was born. So she died before 1958. So it was just great. I mean, I had parents who loved me unconditionally, who poured into me, who you knew that you were safe and secure. That's what I was gifted with. And I had family members who loved me, and it was just a great experience. Just the traditional household, Thanksgiving dinners, Halloween, Easter, we got little baby chicks, the little colored baby chicks that today is animal cruelty, I'm sure. So I just found it to be a great place. I mean, we had our squabbles as community children, but it was a good place for me. When I was about 8, my mother and father wanted a bigger place, so they purchased land on Colbert Road, which is across the highway. It was a 2-lane highway, Log End and Yorktown on one side, and Colbert Road and Colmar and Cars, that's what they're named now. They were on the other side. So Colbert Road was called Line Road. Anybody in Skidmore would say, I'm going down Line. It meant they were coming down Colbert Road.
Okay, so like I said, I grew up there, and most of the people in the community, all up and down the Broadneck Road that I had anything to do with, were all African Americans. And I, as a younger child, I went to Skidmore Elementary School, and I was there for the first 3 years. And then after Skidmore, I went to Parole Elementary School and completed school there. family, my mother and father, and I had 4 brothers and 3 sisters. It was 8 of us that my parents raised in the house. And all of us, attended Asbury Broadneck growing up. And my father was a construction worker. And my mother was more or less a homemaker, but from time to time she did go out to work in people's houses and all.
Skidmore Elementary School, was that a Roosevelt? A Julius Roosevelt?
Correct.
Do you remember meeting any great-grandparents?
No, I did not meet any of my great-grandparents. I did a little research. For instance, my great-grandfather that bought the property where I am, I found his name and everything on a deed where he had bought the property and all. And as a matter of fact, his name was Champion, but then apparently, I guess, from slavery and all, he changed his family's name to Champ. So all his kids were named Champ, and he was a champion there. So, and I did not find anything out about his wife, but I found him based on the deed.
How many generations do you remember?
Well, the ones that I actually had any contact with went back to my grandparents. So my mother's side of the family and my father's side of the family. Growing up, I did know, my grandparents and all. As a matter of fact, when I was a younger kid, I worked for one of my grandfathers. He used to sell vegetables down a city dock in Annapolis. And so I used to, when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, I used to go with him in the truck, and we used to sell vegetables and all. He owned a farm over in Grounds Woods. And so I used to go with him, and he would sell, vegetables and stuff at the city dock. He would allow the trucks to back up to where that restaurant is in the center there now, and they would sell stuff out of the back of the truck. And so I was with him. And also when I was younger, around that age, for income and all, I also used to be a caddy down at the Naval Academy golf course. So I had the income from working down there at the golf course. And that's how I learned how to play golf, was from the experience down there, homeworking. And I said, right, okay, and I said, golf is something that you could take to your grave there. So I'm still playing golf now.
The church was more than a place of worship. It was the anchor. It was here where baptisms, weddings, and homegoings brought families together. Faith was not only spiritual, it was survival. From hymnals passed down to the voice of choirs that still echo today, the church safeguarded our stories and gave us strength.
First and foremost, glory to God to be here today in this house, conducting our oral history interviews. I'm thankful for the support of the leadership within the church, the trustees. Let's get started. My name is Curtis Gross Jr. I am with the Annual Father's Day Foundation, and I'm here with Sister Tarry Morris. We're conducting an interview for an oral history project, which was awarded by St. Margaret's Church, Episcopal Church of Annapolis. And we're here to document history of the African-American perspective within the Broadneck Peninsula. So, Sister Tarry, would you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Tarry Allen Morris. I was born in Mulberry Hill, Annapolis, Maryland.
When's your birthday?
My birthday is April the 10th, 1941. I'm 82 years old. Okay.
Now, growing up in Mulberry Hill, can you tell us a little about the community?
Mulberry Hill is a rural community. It is basically all family, the family community. I think it started in that, I can't remember how many years that we've been there, but as long as I've been born there, and it's still there. It still mostly consists of family that live there. My great-grandfather, all the less the grave, he had like 10 acres of land there. And he gave each one of his children a piece of that land. And that land is still standing there today. And it's moved his family still on that land.
So I had the pleasure
to be here with my father today to document his story. Those roundtable discussions that I had growing up, the world will get to witness it now. So, Dad, thank you for being a part of this session today. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me, because it's an honor to be interviewed by my son in regarding to just sharing the knowledge and the wisdom that I had that I'm able to pass on to you and other members who may be partaking in this video.
This was the old church. The church here on this side here, this old church. And then it went from there to here and to now. But actually the first church that we had was over in the back. Was coming from Brownsville. Was there where Amberley, it's a community called Amberley there.
Mm-hmm.
That's where our first church was. To the stair. And it still has the street. They named it after all those years. They called Meeting House Lane. Meeting House Lane. That's where we had church. We had a little field there. And if you go there now, you still see the street that says Meeting House Lane there.
Have you driven by there to see how it was?
Always right by.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I would go back right there on Thursday, really. And it's still that little part is wooded. But they had homes back there. But the first street there is called Meeting House Lane, still.
So technically,
That's where the first church was.
we would never know there was a church there other than through your stories, right?
No,
Wow.
it was back in the 1800s.
Wow.
So the first Asbury Broadneck Church is in Browns Woods.
No,
Amberley.
St. Margaret's. On St. Margaret's Road,
St. Mother's Rose,
yes. And the community there is called Amberley.
Amberley Road.
Yes, if you ride by there, you'll still see the church, the street. And the first street, as you go into Amberley, is called Meeting House Lane, the same name that we had for our first church there.
Wow.
So why did that church from Amberley now come over to where we are now?
Because they,
Broadneck Road.
sons and daughters in Joshua what land, and they gave it to the church. So we moved from that one to the spot there to this spot. They gave us, the church, that the property. They bought it, purchased it from Mr. Richardson, and that's why we moved over here, because they got property in the Crooked Church. They have larger.
Do you know how much did the sons of Joshua raise, or how much did they buy their property for? Like dollar value?
You know, we got that land. I think it was, I'm trying to figure out this here in my notes, that we got that property seemed like $500 at that time. I don't know how many acres it was, but I know that's what they did. And that's why we're here. $100,000 back many years ago.
Do you know any members from, the existing members that are still alive today?
No, the last one of the Sons and Daughters was Mrs. Evelyn Stansbury.
Oh, wow.
Alvin Stansbury's mother. She was the last one of the Sons and Daughters of Josh.
Talking about Reverend George Stansbury's wife?
Yes, his wife. She and her mother and her sister all belonged to the Sons and Daughters of Joshua. And she was the last one living on. She died a couple of years ago.
Yeah, a few years back.
Now we grew up knowing Dr. Sands and Pastor Tillett. Were there any favorite pastors that you had that was some of your favorites growing up?
I guess from back where I remember that when I was born in 1945, we had Reverend Moscow Williams was here as pastor back for 1945. He was the pastor here in Broadneck. So, and then we had a lot of pastors since then.
Right.
But I remember Reverend Moscow Williams because he came in 1945.
Now, so some of us didn't get to experience the church over that was next to our current church.
Right.
Can you tell us some memories you had within the Little Asbury Church?
Little Asbury. Yes, it was a small church. Had a go upstairs, had a stairs banister there. And most of the square children liked to go. They liked to go upstairs. Most of us did. And we were allowed to worship there. But our parents was, like we said, they were old, they were strict. You could stay up there if you behaved. But if you started laughing or giggling, then they would like for you to come down back into the sanctuary. This was
How long were the church services back then? Just here we got about 2 hours.
Oh, yes. 2 hours, sometimes longer. Sometimes longer. Sometimes longer. And we had a church bus that went to community to bring everybody to church.
Growing up, we started to know that Brother Sam Cobra was housed some of the buses at the church, at his house, and
Yes, he did.
had the van. So when did he start taking the role and responsibility of the transportation of the church?
On our first bus driver was Mr. Caesar Johnson. They lived on Johnson Road there in Annapolis. I remember him being the first driver of the church bus. And he would go from community to starting over a hill, and they'd pick us up, and then he would go to Brownswoods. And then he would go around to Clay Hill, which is on St. Margaret's Road now, to pick us up for church on Sunday mornings. And I remember that that's what we did. That's how we got to church, because we didn't have transportation. There's very few that had transportation, but the ones that did, they drove their children there. But the ones that didn't, we rode that bus to church every Sunday.
Anderson.
Right?
Her father was, I believe, Bernard Anderson.
No, her Miss Louise's father was named Roland.
Roland
Roland.
Bernard and Roland Bernard were brothers.
Yes.
Can you tell us, kind of more about Mr. Bernard? I remember you speaking about he was a very handy man.
Well, Mr. Bernard Anderson was my MIF. He was a teacher for the MIF.
Oh, wow.
For the MI youth. And most of the time, which is not allowed now, he would drive us around in his car when we couldn't get around to the different churches. He and Mr. John R. Thomas was the Sunday school leaders there. After Mr. Bernard died, then Mr. John R. took over, who was a brother to Mr. Ufter Thomas. But we had Mr. Bernard for years and years, and he drove us around. We could wonder, I look back and wonder now, how did he get so many of us in that one car? But he drove us around to all the different churches they had from my so we called it the Methodist Youth Fellowship back then. Yeah. But it has changed. Yes.
Now, can you show that picture of Dee's great-grandmother?
Yes. I can work here. This is Dee's great-grandmother. She was one of the ones, she was here. Right there. That's Miss Louise Anderson. She's married to Roland Anderson.
I'm sorry.
That was your great-grandmother. She was one of the group that left Broadneck and went to New York to work.
This was in New York. That's her right here.
Yes.
That's my great-grandmother.
Yes.
Looking just like my grandmother's.
How's the shit down right here?
That's so great. That's about
New York.
She moved to New York along with my grandmother and my aunt, Ida. They're all the members of this church.
So I've always heard Asbury Broadneck was a singing church. Like they were known for singing. You know how or why they got that hand or like that?
I think it was always, as long as I can remember, they would tell you that Broadneck has the best music in the whole county. in the county. They will tell you that.
We just had the most talent.
It's just the talent. There's so much talent here. Which are very gifted. I'm blessed to have the talent that we have and we still have.
Outside of singing, are there any instruments that you can play?
No, I don't play any instruments. I write songs.
Playing the tambourine.
No.
Can you just speak about, I remember, singing in praise band, and it was like the words was always seemed like it was significant in the words. I don't know if they was old Negro spirit.
They come from the old spirituals. old spirituals, or most of them come from biblical verses from the Bible.
So were they like freedom songs, like for slaves?
Oh, oh yes.
So
They are. They are. And you really have to listen, because back then, people, their speech was not clear. So you have to really listen. Because when I first joined, I had to really listen to remember what they were saying. But when I thought back, I said, they're singing songs like, Amazing Grace and What a Friend We Have in Jesus and different songs like that. But I would never have thought that's what they were singing when I first joined, until I joined. And I started to pick up verses, and we look at the Bible. I said, those words are coming from, the Bible, like what Moses said and what John said. I said, that's where they're getting those verses from.
So, in regards to the 4 historic African American communities of the Broadneck Peninsula, which are what? The communities?
Well, they're the most recognized are probably Skidmore, Brownsville, Mulberrydale, Clay Hill, Midtown, and there's a couple others. Middletown, there's another little one over there. I believe over there where BMW is. I forget the name of that one, but these are little pockets where African Americans were farming and came to build boundaries of this church, everything involved with this church. What property that was led to the place put this church.
What was the reason why this church was built?
Well, we're a spinoff of Annapolis, of the Annapolis, Asbury Annapolis, which is on West Street. We actually were a spinoff of that church. And then we eventually became our other church. And the reason then, if we go back to what we learned from St. Margaret's, there was no formalized church built. So some of them were married, buried, and fortunate at St. Margaret's in segregated quarters in the church. So that's it. We came and had our own and created our own religious institution, called Asbury. His church is, I gave about 1838, so it's about 180 some years probably.
But when I thought back, I said, they're singing songs like, Amazing Grace and What a Friend We Have in Jesus and different songs like that. But I would never have thought that's what they were singing when I first joined, until I joined. And I started to pick up the verses, and we look at the Bible. I said, those words are coming from, the Bible, like what Moses said and what John said. And I said, that's where they're getting those verses from, basically from the Bible.
Kind of elaborate on the lyrics from "You Are Down in the Valley."
He's trying to get you to sing. Go ahead and sing a little bit if you want to. I don't know if you had your tea and lemonade there.
Putting me on the spot.
I didn't ask you to sing, CJ did. I want to know the hair.
You want to? So I guess you could talk about or sing. It's up to you.
Some of the songs is like John said, "I am the man. Look at the nail prints in my hand." And you see that in the Bible where God, when they was crucifying him, when they put the nail prints in his hand, that's how they referred to most of the songs, because they're taken from the Bible.
Every family has an heirloom, a keepsake of love, struggle, and memory. A photograph, a wedding ring, a tool once used to till the soil. These objects speak when words fail, reminding us who we are and where we come from. In them, we find continuity. In them, we see resilience.
You they shined their shoes up, but they had to walk through cornfields to get to church. But they had shiny shoes. And one thing about y'all, when you grew up, you made sure you had a suit tie on. And you still carrying that stigma with you now, because you always in a suit and tie, which I'm very impressed, because sometimes it's not about pressing the people. It's because of your image and how we want to be the best that we can be based on who we are. And it's not what the style is, not what the next door neighbor got on. It's not what these kids do. We never got involved in that. We stayed structured with the morals and values of our families. And that's what this church family had put into us. And so in that case, we stayed in church. You brought you guys in the church. You bringing your kids in the church. Because again, if you don't have a foundation of God, you don't have no foundation, because life gonna make a lot of disappointments. Gonna give you a lot of disappointments. It's gonna be a lot of sorrows. It's gonna be a lot of sickness. It's gonna be a lot of death. But if you don't have that understanding of why we died or why we perished, that's why a lot of folks are just in a disarray, because God has to be the foundation of our whole entire life. And my mom and dad embedded in us, because every Sunday morning we had ATR playing. And today we play ATR. It'll start that morning before we go to church.
Yeah.
And
And no rap until afternoon, or no hip hop, no jazz afternoon.
you woke up every morning with ATR or church or some kind of gospel singing or gospel preaching. And it started with my grandmother. It's the same thing. There's a gospel preachings or gospel singing in the morning before you went to church. And we spent all day long in church. You go to church in the morning, you get out at 2 o'clock, you go pray for an hour and a half, you eat dinner, and you come back in church until it's time for you to go to bed. And that was every Sunday, every month.
No skipping Sunday or skip. Can go to the beach for one Sunday, bro.
And I think one of the other merits of this church here that my dad made us all go Sunday school. And I was like, hey, Dad, we go Sunday school. We go school. No, you go to school. And I didn't even understand Sunday school because of the fact that I thought it was just something more. They just want us to keep still. But no, they was trying to teach us the Bible, teach us the way of life through Bible, through Bible study, and study the Word. And you got to continue to study the Word to be prayed up, because in this world right here, we're in some really serious times in our life. And for my kids, for your kids, that you got to let them know that when everything else fails, God's still there with us, by our side, 24/7. 24/7.
But life on the Broadneck Peninsula was not without its struggles. Segregation, discrimination, and the slow erasure of black spaces threatened our existence. Land was lost, schools were closed, families moved away searching for opportunity. Yet, through it all, the voices of this community never fell silent. The Oral History Project captures these stories, ensuring they remain not as whispers, but as a testimony.
More so often than not, we don't hear about our own roots and history and have to hear it from outsiders and people that don't look like us. This is our modest attempt to change that narrative, to do our part in preserving our own roots and our own history in and through one of our longest lasting institutions, the Black Church. The Annual Father's Day Foundation provides a deep understanding of the cultural, social, economic contributions of the African American community to the broader history of the region. Here today we have our next guest interview. You start by telling us today what your name is and what community you grew up in.
My name is Hacker Randolph Harold Rowel from Mulberry Hill. And my aunt and from your family went lineage of Green and Andrews. Grandmother's Anderson, my grandpa's Green, Evan Charles.
And what other areas did you grow up in as far as, or did your family, Alabama? Or?
No, my father's from Alabama, Gaston, Alabama. Mother's from Mulberry Hill. When they married in 1949, we lived with my grandparents, where 5 children were born, that were raised there. And at about 8 years old, they were to save our money by living with my grandparents. And we all moved to a brand new house in Forest Village, which is a neighborhood, a black neighborhood that was developed in around the late 50s. In parole area. So I lived there for about from time 8 to about 12. And then our parents split up. We went to now Parkins. And then my brother and I ended up coming back to my father back to Forest Villa. And I spent my teenage years in Eastport down on 5th Street with my father and Robin. And my another part of my teenage years, I lived in Horror House, which is the operating piece.
You know what I'm saying? And you mentioned about the youth, basketball team and the baseball team and the football team. Well, someone did that for me. So therefore, me giving back, that's why I said we needed to have those things. Those things taught us a lot.
We thank you for doing that for us too. And one of the things I wanted to bring up was that the Maryland Giants and the Smackers hat, which was a big success for us. We sold these Brunswick Smackers hat to raise money for the foundation for our Father's Day event. It's funny because it came out, we dropped the hats around the time that Chris Rock and Will Smith had their little thing. Mm-hmm. So they seen Smackers on the hat. They thought we was trying to piggyback off of that. We're like, no, we're not gonna play with this name. Mm-hmm. This name, you know what I mean? It means a lot to our neighborhood. It's the Smackers and the Maryland Giants.
So that progressed, and I was, academic. During the segregation period, I went to school. I did very well. And I went to junior high school. I did. After I got in about 10th grade, the street started calling me, and my grades were all, and I got cool, and I wasn't as academic involved.
I thought it was here with Larry Griffin.
More than Larry Griffin.
The little name drop some days.
Oh, my friends were my cousins, Gerald, the folks I met along the way through sports, through music. So as I left the high school, during high school, I was involved with basketball, played JV, varsity, and I played marching band, orchestra. I played sousaphone. I played instruments from the time I was in elementary school all the way through. Of course, I come from a musical family. My mother was one of the Rita sisters was a gospel group. They were getting very popular in the area.
Lily Gray
helped upbringing my father. So she was very much into music, and so we grew up around them practicing in our house. Piano player.
I heard stories about the organ being stolen.
That was just something that was in my great grandfather's house. Although that's a brain that got taken by somebody, I don't know. Because my family but that was something that inspired my mother to play piano. She played what time she was 18, till she died. So she played for a good 70 years in churches. Which influenced us because she sang in a group with her and Stan and by all this always been around music. And
did anybody take it far with the music?
Yeah, well they took it.
I needed this rather from the session.
Yeah, I think Keith went further than anybody because he played for big mega churches and did that for a number of years. And was involved in a number of things like Martin Luther King celebration of the land in Georgia. He wrote a song. So he was probably the star folk. Yeah, he probably was the person that took it. And that just he really did stop the APM until about 16 and 17. So it wasn't that he started from a very early age. So that was the music side. Mm-hmm. And then the side for career-wise, and then I went to college, went to Morgan, majored in biology, chemistry, graduated. And my goal was to be an MD. But I went Western Maine and then up in Utah, where my brother-in-law lived. And started a plant shop. I used to do art with the same paintings and stuff. And started business. So that was my first business. And then
what was the name of that?
Galactic Plant House. Okay. It was located in Salt Lake City, Utah. And from there, I went to I was hanging on track to get my MD. I was working next to the School of Medicine. I was taking classes, and then the tragedy event, and my father hit a massive heart attack. That phone call changed my trajectory in terms of what is your career. Which in hard act. Oh yeah, okay. At the master's, and eventually came back and used that information to start a couple of nonprofits in the Athens area. Arundel Development Institute and Planning Action Committee of Renner County. Was also helpful and worked with my sister-in-law Patty to start project.
So you were also part of a program called ADI, which was, what was that?
That was a nonprofit, the Arundel Development Institute, which trained low income in computers in the 80s, which was unheard of.
Cutting edge.
Cutting edge.
State of the art.
State of the art, introducing low income to computers at a time when they did not have access.
Why is it important to propose state of the art programming for our people?
Well, state of the art and then technology in particular, because the technology is what drives the world. When they invented the wheel in Africa, and that changed the way people travel. When they invented the car, that changed the way people travel. So technology always is something that I believe, and I learned early. Early exposure to technology allows us to leap ahead faster. We tend to get technology lax. We tend to get access to computers or AI, all these things lax. So therefore we don't reap the full benefits of those that get early. So that's why I always believe technology is one way of getting our folks exposed. And when you combine them with things like art, then you really can be great.
Beyond the hardships were the joys that stitched life together. Family reunions on hot summer days, fishing at the shore, recipes that tasted like home. These ordinary moments became extraordinary acts of preservation, holding on to culture, laughter, and traditions that nourish the soul.
All the time. The little things that you did for us, maybe I didn't appreciate it as much when I was a kid. As an adult, I'm just so thankful because, especially with the climate of the world, we could have easily got caught up in doing anything. But because we had great leaders like yourself, picking me up from Sunday school. I remember one time I was playing on a baseball team and I didn't want to go to practice. And Gerald, you tracked me down. I wasn't nowhere but across the street playing with my friends. But, it was those things that, practice, makes perfect. I love playing the games. I just didn't like going to practice. So you instilled those things in me. And, a lot of things that we do, sometimes we think that, we're coming up with a brand new, fresh idea. Little do we know, these things, it's been passed down to us, yeah.
And nothing new under the sun. You're absolutely right. It's nothing new under the sun.
I want to switch it up a little bit, Mr. Gerald. Talk about, NAACP and civil rights. As someone who has grown up in the Broadneck Peninsula area, how did you witness or participate in the desegregation of schools or other significant milestones of the civil rights era? What impacts did these changes have on your community?
And a lot of changes because it broke up that family structure in a lot of ways. As I was saying earlier, when we had PTA meetings, if my mother couldn't make the PTA meeting, my aunt probably was there because her son went to the school too. We had that community support of, and again, we go, when you hear those stories about if you do something wrong and cousin Susan see you do it, cousin Susan's gonna deal with you. She gonna deal with you, and then she gonna send you home, and your parents gonna deal with you. You know what I'm saying? But so you had all eyes on deck.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So if my mother didn't see something, maybe my my aunt saw something, and she's gonna bring it. And my aunt is not gonna jump on her and say, "Don't be telling me about my kids." She's gonna jump on me, okay, instead of my aunt, and make me get straight. I remember an incident when I was a young man, and I was a real young man. There was a store in Mulberry Hill, cousin Prudence Johnson, that owned. During that time, soda bottles were 5 cents. You could get 5 cents on the return on the bottle. Okay, so I went up there one day, and she had a bottle sit right there on the porch. So I grabbed me a couple of bottles and took them in and got my 5 cents off each bottle. Okay? And next thing you know, my father was walking me up to Miss Prue's store. We call her Miss Prue, Cousin Prue. Walked up Cousin Prue's store, and she said, "Well, I don't want nothing to done with him, but I just want him to know he didn't get away with bringing those 2 bottles in here that he didn't have." And so, of course, I caught it when I got home. But it just shows that, they didn't take for granted that we could get away with those kind of things. You know what I'm saying? So what got me, again, I experienced myself while working for a man named George Phelps as a vice president of his company in the security industry. I parked in front of a store, and the guy came out the store and said to me, using the N-word, "Move your car out of my store, in front of my store." I said, I couldn't believe this guy was calling me using the N-word like that. And I'm parking in a public parking lot. The parking lot is right across from Hillcrest Cemetery, that little shopping center there. And so the guy actually tried to grab me out the car, calling me a bunch of N-words, and I mean, it was just something to experience. And I was like, I can't believe this happening, but there was enough witnesses that saw what happened from both sides, white and black, who actually saw what happened, and they actually came to court, and the guy was charged with doing that. But it left something in me because I didn't fight. You know what I mean? I knew I had the ability to fight this guy, but I didn't fight. I was stood my grounds and figured I would deal with him another way, in which we're in the court system. So in doing that, I started thinking more and more about what's right and what's wrong, and how people are treated simply because of the color of their skin. So that's what got me in more, encouraged me more to get involved.
Hunts Movers, not only did they have a business, but they had a basketball team. Can you describe the history of the basketball team and its name?
Yeah, gentleman one of his cousins who had passed away now, named Mousy Hunt, was big into Annapolis basketball. If you played Annapolis basketball, then it was like being in, like New York or a big town. Yeah, Ruppin Park. So Mousy came over with my dad probably when I was probably like 15, 16, asked my dad to sponsor a basketball team. Now, granted, when your parents, with your father, because he had a business and needed a sponsor. So my dad did that. And granted, because I was an athlete, I wasn't a good one at that time, I got put on the team because I was the sponsor's son. So like when you're the coach's son, you got a scrubby game though, but you're on the team because of the coach's, the coach's son. But, I was on there and felt like I was a little part of the team, felt good about it because my dad sponsored. I was feeling good because I was wearing my dad's jersey, name Huntsville was on the basketball court. So one thing about that kind of activity is that one, it's exposure. That name is our advertisement for their name. And, and a lot of people, when you go to black sponsors, they don't like to sponsor you. But they ain't asking for everything. They just need somebody to pay the entry fee or help pay for the uniforms or whatever. And I couldn't understand that growing up. That's like, because, you go to the other American people, if they don't know you, they're not going to give you any money towards your team, whatever. But I was grateful that my dad did that because he got a lot of recognition for sponsoring that team. Because not only it sponsored, it won a couple of championships. So that means Hunts Movers was in the paper. And everybody said, yeah, your team doing well. Act like we was like a big time NBA owner or something, But it's a good feeling knowing that, we had that kind of statue and notoriety because of the fact that we supported. That means pouring back into the community. We pour our resources that we made and put it right back into the community, which made
It's called memory faggots. Hey. Yeah, so growing up, the Y was always the place to be on a Tuesday night or Friday night. Was there still that same anticipation or excitement back then when
it is. ideally it was better back then, and that's a little different now. But originally, the summer league I think started over in the Eastport. When I started going to summer league, it was the Eastport. What was it somewhere before Eastport? I don't know, but my recollection that we used to stand around the fence over Eastport and watch the basketball games. And then it got so big where people were complaining about the traffic and the people all over the place. They moved it to the Y when they built the Y.
Jefferson Park.
Yeah, and that's what I played at when it was at the Y.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was good excitement though. But I was an outside kid trying to fit in, and but my game got polished later on in life.
Talk about how you came up with that name.
Well, the Maryland Giants, again, that's history. Okay, that's history before my time. But we used to walk through from Mulberry Hill to Brown Woods, what we call the branch. Okay, and the branch was nothing but a little bit of a stream that connected to Martin's Cove in the back. And Mulberry Hill would walk down there and cross over, and then we walked through what we call Turkey Bond.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was like tobacco field, and get to the baseball game, the Maryland Giants. Okay, and it was so funny. Most of the younger guys like myself during that time, I mean, there were some great athletes. You talk about the Pyramids, you talk about Oscar Henson, who should have been a pro baseball player, just missed this opportunity because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time when the scouts came to watch him. This man could throw a curveball that wouldn't look like he made a circle. I'm serious. I mean, he was, and my father was a part of that with the little leagues. So he started with Edward Henson, and he was a catcher, man. That boy could catch. I mean, so if you go back to the Negro League and those kind of things, during that time, those things were real. Okay, opportunity was hard to come by. It wasn't that they weren't the best players; they just never had the opportunity. And I think some of those folks up there got the right opportunity. They like the Pyramids. I mean, them boys could hit the ball from one end of Brown Woods over and across the highway, across Brown Woods Road. So, out of respect for what they gave us, all right, because every Saturday we were down at Browns Woods Diamond watching the Maryland Giants play baseball, okay? Then you had the Davisonville team, so, and that's why I said John Mickle, look him up. John Mickle, I mean, this guy was something, he never got his props.
So you're saying Mickle from the bowling alley? The one that he was a bowling alley commissioner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, same one. But he was actually, I think it's called the Davisonville Tigers. I may be wrong about the name. But if you look him up, John Mickle, you see he had a history. He should have been a pro. Then he brought his little league, Northwest Little League team, and we practiced over on Bestgate Road. And again, I was the only one from out of the Mulberry Hill Browns area on that team. But these were mentors, you know what I'm saying, that cared about young folks. Okay, and so it wouldn't be fair for me to take that bread, eat it, and forget about it. You see what I'm saying? I always say eating bread is soon forgotten, but I was not going to be one of those people to forget about that bread that was fed to me. Okay, so therefore I try to pass it on, and I still like to see, again, that's why I'm so happy about what you guys are doing, because again, you all are coming back and doing what needed to be done for our community. You know what I'm saying? And to see young folks doing this, you know what I'm saying? It touches my heart to see that, because that's what we need. I can say it, my father can say it, my grandfather can say it, but when you say it and your peers hear you saying it, you'd be surprised at who's looking at you and saying, I want to be like him. You know what I'm saying? I want to do what he's doing. I've been that way myself. Folks come and say, I used to watch you all the time and da-da-da-da-da. You know what I mean? Never thought I was being watched.
What one generation remembers, the next must inherit. That is why these stories, these voices have been preserved in the Maryland State National Archive, not to gather dust, but to shine light. For the young people of Broadneck, these recordings are a map, a reminder that they walk paths laid by ancestors who sacrificed so they might stand taller.
Hi, my name is Devon Edwards. Today I'll be interviewing Brother Upton Thomas Jr. Today is September 10th, and we are conducting today's interview at Asbury Broadneck United Methodist Church. This is the first interview session with Mr. Upton Thomas. for the annual Father's Day Foundation Oral History Project. Brother Upton Thomas Jr., thank you for joining us today.
A pleasure.
As we begin the interview, Brother Upton, can you please introduce yourself by name and say where you are from?
The name is Upton H. Thomas Jr., and I'm from the mailing address is Annapolis with the zip code 21409, but I just live right up the street from the church here on the Broadneck Peninsula on Middletown Road.
Okay. While we're on the subject of you're from, can you begin by describing your hometown? What was the community like? What was it like growing up there? Were there mostly African Americans or other racial groups in your community?
I started out initially down on Mulberry Hill, and then when my parents built their house up on the Middletown Road where I am now, and that's when I moved up there when I was probably about 5 years old or so. And when I moved into the community, it was all African American. And my mother's family owned most of the property. On the place where I live right now is the land that was owned or bought by my great-grandfather. And it was from the beginning of Middletown Road that went all the way down to Route 50. So it was probably about 15 or 18 acres that he had there. And it went to all of his children. And so my grandfather was, got some, and then he went to my mother, and my mother passed it to me and my wife. And so when I retired from the service, and I built my house there.
The Oral History Project is more than a collection of interviews. It is a living monument, a bridge between past and present, between memory and future. Each recorded voice is not a simple story. It's an heirloom, carefully placed in the archives for generations yet unborn.
Welcome. More so often than not, we don't get to tell our own stories. We don't get to control our own narratives. More so often than not, we are listening and watching our histories and our stories be told, most oftenly by people that don't look like us. So, without further ado, I want to introduce our next guest.
I'm known as William Carl Lawrence III. Carl Lawrence, neighborhood named Quick Carl to Quick. School named me CO for my initials, Carl Lawrence.
Now, this project is set up to do a few things. We want to change that narrative. We want to do that in one of the longest lasting institutions in our community, which is the Asbury Broadneck United Methodist Church, located here at 657 Broadneck Road, Nevis, Maryland, 21409, maybe less than a few miles away from the Bay Bridge. And through these series of interviews, we want to provide a deeper understanding of the culture, the social, economic opportunities and contributions of the African American community to the broader history in this region. So it's very important that we sit down and discuss and talk and meet with people like that. And that's what brought us here, talk to my brother Carl. So the annual Father's Day historical and contextual context report is here to you. Welcome. And while we're on the subject, where are you from, bro?
I'm originally from the state of Maryland, Anne Arundel County, Annapolis City, Community, Browns Woods.
Okay.
Forest Beach Road, 360 Forest Beach Road. 21401, not the 21409, not the phone number 349, but 757.
Right. Now, I know what it was like for you growing up from when I met you, as a young child. But you and my brother's age, very close, But what was, for the world, what was it like growing up in Browns Woods in, I'm assuming, what, 70s, 80s?
Yes, 70s, 80s. I was born 1970, July 16th, 1970 was my birthday. So the phrase that you hear it takes a whole village to raise a child. You grew up in Browns Woods or Mulberry Hill or one of the other black neighborhoods on the Broadneck Peninsula, you raised in that village. If you weren't related to someone that you was related to that
Now, how did Brownswoods become acquired, Mulberry Hill? Because I'm from Mulberry Hill, in case y'all may not know that. 2134 Mulberry Hill Road. How did Brownswoods and Mulberry Hill become acquired? I mean, was it mostly black people in that time? I mean, I noticed something nasty.
All right, so this is shared. So this is the legacy that's left with me. You don't need no money or no pocketbook or a hat or coat that your grandparents, great-grandparents lead to you. It's the history to lead to you. You don't know where you're going and you don't know where you come from, and you can't return back somewhere if you don't know where that is. So Browns Woods, and I'll start with my family, how I'm related to you, how I'm related to who's in the church with us, is through the Andersons. So the Andersons, which is my grandmother's family, Thelma Cornish, or Thelma Adams Owens, then Thelma Adams Owens Cornish, was born in Mulberry Hill along with her other 11 siblings. My great-grandmother Harriet Anderson was also born in Mulberry Hill. Her parents was born in Mulberry Hill. And for most people don't know, when you were born in the early 1900s or late 1800s, you were born in Mulberry Hill and then imported across the creek into Brownswood. So God's country is also shared by most in Browns Woods, and if most people don't know, God's country is Mulberry Hill. Now, so when you have that, if your last name Johnson, Hunt, Green, Henson, Anderson, Adams, whatever the name is, Stansbury, whatever the last name is, it was in Mulberry Hill. And now they moved to Brownswood.
Now let's talk about the neighboring spaces around these communities, right? Like Martha's Cove, Providence. Were these communities predated by these places?
Yeah, predate.
Right.
Yeah, predate. So Providence is full.
What the Naval Academy golf course? What were some of the before usages of that?
That was the Andersons plantation. So the family name of the Andersons actually is the surname of the slave family that they were enslaved to. Providence is, according to history, before the boat went down to Jamestown and Williamsburg and all that, it stopped at Providence. Yeah, some of the first settlers in Anne Arundel County, Annapolis, was at
That's why they call it the birthplace of Annapolis.
Providence. But way before then, you could go back. Mountain lions, bears used to come to that point and feed, come together, produce other animals. So originally it was part of Marley. So all that, Mulberry Hill, Browns Woods, everything was part of Marley.
Marley Neck.
Marley Neck, and that's why it's a neck. It's called a neck. It come down to the neck.
Now tell me one day you were talking about, why Anne Arundel County, the city of Annapolis, was such a rich history or location to be at as it relates to owning slaves, right? And why that was such an important port as it relates to other local ports. Because you notice that Anne Arundel County, and specifically on the Broadneck Peninsula, there was a great uptick of about some like 10, 20,000 documented slaves in this area. And just speak on that a little bit.
So we'll start with water. We'll start with water and ships. All right, so during the time of slavery, there was no engines on ships, so everything had to sail. You can't sail directly from the western coast of Africa to the east coast of the United States. You got to follow the trade winds on down and up to the Caribbeans and on the coastline of America. Well, for some reason, all right, when you go from large body of water to small body of water very choppy. Okay? But when they were navigating through the Chesapeake Bay, they noticed that the Severn River, going from small body to largest body water in Chesapeake Bay, was smooth passage, which meant that if you take the downtown Annapolis, why it's the largest slave trade in history, is because the boats didn't have to anchor out in the bay and then row in 2 or 3 slaves at a time and then row back out to get some more slaves. The ships they come straight from Africa up the coastline into Annapolis port, dock, take the ships off, put them in the buildings, and that's why in the basement don't allow, if any hooks are down there, you ain't supposed to, because of the, take them out, because of historical law, because of the historical part of it. Now, so what I'm out. So then what actually happens in that point, when ships are coming from south, that whole ship come in, they come right in the port, grab their slaves from off the post, and then back out to Chesapeake Bay and back out wherever they go, back to the Atlantic, and further, further south. So we do get, a lot of most places are racist in the world because of the white and what one person decided to say black is bad. And when they say black is bad, way back in when, that means that all blacks, whether we're free or not, we're bad. And we needed to be tamed. That's why they wanted to slave us, because we were bad. We were part animal, part this, part that. How we thought savages, but we all know, what the Americans did to the natives was savage. What they did to us was savage. So you can't be lazy, because in modern day, what we have, ain't too many things we ain't invent. Because to make it better for us, I ain't walking around barefooted, so me invent the shoe.
What do you think about reparations then for the descendants of the slaves on the Broadneck Peninsula? What's your thoughts on that?
How do you determine what your value is when it comes to that? Especially if you talking about personal money and you talking about labor, like, those are businesses. If I'm out planting, I'm building a place for you to stay in as the master, but the quarters you have me build ain't worth staying there. Soul food, as they say, that was straps. This strap food, it ain't soul food. That was survival. We're gonna take what you don't want out of the pig or the cow or, turnip greens, and it wasn't kale. That stuff was it was weeds. It was weeds, that we were eating. So when you look at that, how do you establish that you're gonna pay someone for generations to generations? You gotta go back to 1600. So you'd have to first of all establish on what you would pay us based upon our value, our worth, like, because we were someone's possession.
Come on there.
So if we were someone's possession, that's an asset. Any money that's here in Annapolis, real money, has been here since they first came here. So that money would have to match money that's been here for generations and generational wealth. That's what we go, generational wealth. So you give me, let's say you give me $1 million. Right? Is that really worth what my ancestors may have suffered? And we don't know how much they really suffered. But one thing I can say about this, we all will raise their hand and say, all right, if I would be disciplined, do I want to be punished or do I want to be beat? Beat me, let me keep running around Browns Woods. But punish me, say I can't go down to ball time and play with my cousins. Oh my God.
Speaking of punishment, we've been aware of some stories about Browns Woods having a jail in it. Can you share some light about that? So just some history for people, because you can't find that in no book.
Sure. All right. So let's just go back to where Browns Woods technically ain't even a community name. It ain't even a legal. Browns Woods ain't even a legal name. So let's start there first. Let's start there first, because Browns Woods technically is subdivided.
How did you get the name, Brown?
Right. All right. So So we'll move from taking 2 slaves out of slavery, buying up land that the bank was going to foreclose. The bank was foreclosing on. So there were subdivisions of those 2 slave names. So you have J.R. Thomas subdivision, and then you have Mary Green Hunt subdivision. So one part is Browns Woods Road, one part is Forest Beach Road. Well, after slavery, a family decided, just not in what they call Browns Woods, started putting schoolhouses along the Broadneck Peninsula, so the free slaves to be educated, so they could be educated.
One in Skidmore.
Right. So when you get the schoolhouse into Browns Woods, we get Browns Woods Road because the surname, the Brown, bought woods was the original land, and he bought acres of woods, so it was the Brown Woods. That's really what it was. Brown last name, his woods. Road to his woods. They put the school on Browns Woods Road. So the school was the surname on Browns Woods Road.
Roswell School is big.
Roswell School on Browns Woods Road. Then it just got shortened to the schoolhouse on Browns Woods Road to just the schoolhouse. Well, the name take on Browns Woods because of the schoolhouse is on Browns Woods Road, and because the family members are going, which my father attended the school.
And you got to continue to study the word to be prayed up. Because in this world right here, we're in some really serious times in our life. And for my kids, for your kids, that you got to let them know that when everything else fails, God's still there with us, by our side, 24/7. 24/7.
The Broadneck Peninsula is more than land. It is more than water. It is a people, strong, proud, and enduring. Through faith, through family, through memory, they continue to write every history every single day. This project is their legacy, and it is our responsibility to carry it forward together.
Set my 3-part harmony. Said